I made a special apple juice just for you. You're gonna drink it, right? Saying this, my mother-in-law, with a determined smile, offers me a glass. We had brought our child for the first time to my husband's family's home after giving birth, and she handed me a cute little glass. Filled with plenty of apple juice, I took it and went to the kitchen, only to pour the contents down the sink. What are you doing? If you didn't want it, you could have just said so, but to throw it away right in front of me. I slowly turned around to my mother-in-law's scream. When our eyes met, she seemed to falter for a moment but then clung to my stunned husband, berating how terrible a woman I was. Mrs. Grubb. I called her in a deliberately low voice, and she visibly flinched, her shoulders jerking. As if she was hiding something. I held back a sigh. Mrs. Grubb, this isn't apple juice, is it? It's really this. My name is Amy, 28 years old. I married my husband of the same age, Mike, after a year of dating, 3 years ago. We are a working couple. I have continued working as an employee at a general company since graduating, even after getting married. In the midst of all this, I was able to get pregnant with our long-awaited baby last year, so I decided to take maternity leave. Mike took very good care of me while I was pregnant, doing most of the housework during my morning sickness. He struggled with cooking, which he wasn't good at, but I'm really grateful to him. We were able to have a healthy baby boy just the other day. We named him Tim. Mike, who attended the birth, cried with joy when he saw Tim. He's so cute, like an angel. Amy, thank you so much for all the hard work. Mike, you're crying too much. Life began with Mike, Tim, and me, and I was filled with happiness. Mike was a good husband and a good father. He was very proactive with housework and childcare. Blessed with a kind husband and a cute child, I was spending peaceful and calm days. But there was one big concern. It was my in-laws, who lived an hour's drive from our house. My in-laws are both retired, and they seem to have received a lot of retirement money, so they travel abroad all the time. Traveling abroad is not a problem at all, but they always buy a lot of sweets for souvenirs. Generally, this might be a pleasant thing. But I have a peanut allergy, so I'm very particular about what I eat. I once accidentally ate a peanut-containing sweet and suffered from respiratory distress. So I explained to my in-laws about the allergy and asked them to avoid food, but... Mr. Grubb, Mrs. Grubb, I've told you before, I have a peanut allergy. So, I'd like you to avoid things like chocolate that might contain peanuts. I can't always tell what's in foreign products by looking at the ingredients. What are you talking about? The best souvenirs are local food. There are many things you can't easily eat here. And yet you complain, isn't that a bit too much? She is right. We want you guys to eat local food too. But to complain without eating it, isn't that rude? Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law had no understanding of allergies, and they scolded me. Even when Mike said to them, "You're both taking this allergy thing too lightly. If it accidentally goes into her mouth, it can turn into something serious. In the worst case, it could be irreparable. Please take it more seriously," they didn't listen. Moreover, my in-laws travel many times in a short period, and they hand over the souvenirs all at once. Since they sometimes give me things they bought months ago, there are often items past their expiration date. Hey, Dad, Mom, this has expired again. Don't send us stuff like this. At Mike's pointing, my in-laws make a face as if they don't understand what the big deal is. It's a best before date, not an expiration date. It's not spoiled, so don't be so uptight about it. Even though it's something sent to her son, my mother-in-law thinks it's no big deal, laughing and saying, "It's just fine. You're being too strict." She shows no remorse. This has added to our estrangement with my in-laws. We did report the birth of our child, but since they were on an overseas trip, we hadn't yet introduced Tim to his grandparents. They're coming back from their trip tomorrow, and we've agreed to go visit them at their house next weekend as a family of 3. When the weekend came, we headed for the in-laws' house by car. It isn't Mike and Amy, it's been a while. Come on in, come on in. My mother-in-law welcomed us with a smile, and my father-in-law also greeted us warmly, saying, "Glad you could come." They were both very excited to meet their first grandchild for the first time and had smiles on their faces, saying, "He's adorable." So far, everything was going smoothly, and I was glad we were able to introduce Tim to his grandparents. Soon after, my mother-in-law asked, "Amy, would you like some juice?" Feeling a little startled, I asked just to be sure, "What kind of juice is it?" My mother-in-law replied with a big smile, "Apple juice, my homemade one. It's really delicious, and I want you to try it." Thinking, apple juice should be fine, there shouldn't be any peanuts in it, I was relieved. "If it's apple juice, I'll have some. Homemade by you, that's amazing. Thank you. Just wait a moment." My mother-in-law then went to the kitchen and came back after a while. "Here you go. I've poured it into a glass for you." She handed me the glass of apple juice. I said, "Thank you," and accepted it, but immediately noticed something off, and I got up and headed for the kitchen. "Amy?" Mike asked, puzzled, but I silently poured the entire contents of the glass down the sink. "Amy, what are you doing? Throwing away the drink like that? Apologize to Mom." Mike, filled with shock and anger. My mother-in-law was also furious, saying, "To throw it away after I went to the trouble of preparing it, what's the meaning of this? It's my homemade juice. How could you?" I calmly told Mike. "Mike, I would have died if I had drunk this." No way." Mike was stunned and seemed to grasp the situation, turning pale. He asked his mother, trembling, "Mom, what was the drink you gave to Amy? Wasn't it just apple juice?" His mother answered nonchalantly, "I told you it's my homemade apple juice. There's also peanut liqueur in it. It's a cocktail." My husband, in disbelief, let out an incredulous cry. I was aghast, saying, "I knew it. I smelled peanuts. And peanut liqueur, of all things." Yes, I had been certain that there were peanuts in the drink when I put the glass to my lips, as I had strongly smelled peanuts. I hadn't thought it was alcohol. My mother-in-law snorted and said, "What's the big deal? Mixing peanut liqueur with apple juice is delicious, I heard it from the locals. This peanut liqueur is a souvenir from our overseas trip, you should be grateful to drink it." Mike was furious and yelled at his mother. "On top of it, serving alcohol to a woman who has just given birth, are you out of your mind? She's breastfeeding Tim. Anyone would know that. You've raised kids yourself. I just can't trust you anymore." Mike is beside himself with anger and sadness. However, his mother-in-law doesn't seem to care at all. "Oh, come on, Mike, don't be so angry," she says. Even the father-in-law says, "Come on, Mike, don't get so angry. Amy isn't drinking, so it's fine," nonchalantly. After all, peanut liqueur isn't the same as peanuts themselves. You're making a big deal out of it, Mike. When did you become so naggy? Maybe it's because of Amy. And it's fine to have a little alcohol while breastfeeding. These kids are so neurotic, it's driving me nuts." The mother-in-law speaks with a snide tone. It's like they don't understand allergies at all. I calmly explained to my mother-in-law, "Mrs. Grubb, peanut liqueur is obviously made from peanuts. So, if I, who have a peanut allergy, were to consume it, I could have a severe allergic reaction called anaphylactic shock." I've explained the allergic reaction over and over, but she doesn't seem to understand at all. What's anaphylactic? I think I've heard of it before, but it's a bit complicated and I don't really understand. I just wanted you to enjoy it because it's delicious. Why do I have to be blamed? It's terrible. My mother-in-law covers her face as if she's the victim. I also explained to her the risks of alcohol while breastfeeding. "Mrs. Grubb, please listen carefully. Drinking alcohol while breastfeeding can transfer the alcohol to the breast milk, and it might harm Tim's health. I've heard that alcohol can reduce the quality of breast milk, and I don't want to drink it. So please don't do this ever again. I'm really begging you. You're such a nag. Enough already. Honey, help. Mike and Amy are both accusing me. My mother-in-law seeks help from my father-in-law, and he takes her side, saying, "Mike, Amy, let's leave it at that. She didn't mean any harm." Then why, Mom, did you lie and say it was just apple juice? Why did you call alcohol juice? Trying to deceive and make Amy drink that. Don't mess with us. Both of you are out of your minds. Mike shouts in anger. His father yells back at him, "What's that tone towards your parents? Apologize now." "That's it, I'm cutting ties with you both. I'll never see you again. And you'll never see Tim again either." Mike makes a declaration of severance, and his parents retaliate. "You're no son of ours anymore. Just get out of this house. Yeah, get out. Don't ever cross our threshold again." Mike says I don't need to be told that. "Amy, let's go." "Yes, let's go." I pick up Tim, and the three of us head for the front door. As we leave, my in-laws continue to say, "This is all an exaggeration. What's an allergy anyway? It's just being spoiled." We ignore them and leave their house. In the car on the way home, Mike apologizes to me. "Amy, I'm really sorry. I have so much to apologize for. First, I'm sorry for yelling when you threw away the drink. I'm really sorry for yelling without even asking why you did that. And for my mother doing such a thing. It's not something that can be forgiven with an apology, but I'm sorry." "It's not your fault, Mike. But, cutting ties with your parents, was it the right thing to do? We've been estranged before, but..." "Yeah, of course. I couldn't continue the relationship after what happened. What would have happened if you'd been deceived into drinking it today? I chose to cut ties to protect you and Tim," Mike said, looking very dependable in my eyes. "Thank you. Honestly, I was also feeling that continuing the relationship with your father and mother was impossible, so I was a little relieved when you made the declaration to sever ties." I smiled, feeling lighter at the thought that we wouldn't have to worry about my in-laws anymore. Still, why are my parents so ignorant about allergies? No matter how many times I explain it, they don't get it, or rather, they don't want to get it, Mike wonders. They probably think of it as the same kind of thing as liking or disliking food. They even said that allergies are just being spoiled. Yeah, it's scary to think that they could cause trouble in the future, being so ignorant. Well, it doesn't matter anymore since we've cut ties. Oh, I should tell Aunt Christy, who lives near my parents' house, that we've cut ties. Aunt Christy lives near Mike's parents' house, and I've met her a few times. She's cheerful and very nice. Yeah, it might be best to let her know. Yep, I'll call her tomorrow. And so we returned home to our peaceful daily lives. A few months later, a call came through to me. It was during a weekday afternoon when Mike was at work, and I was playing with Tim. Since it was from an unregistered number, I answered it, wondering who it could be. "Hello, Amy? It's been a while, it's me, Christy. I'm sorry for calling so suddenly." The call was from Aunt Christy. "Oh, Aunt Christy, it's been a long time. Sorry for calling you all of a sudden. I just called Mike and got your number from him. I already talked to Mike, but something serious has happened." "Something serious?" Well, the story I heard from Aunt Christy was shocking. My mother-in-law had been sued, it turns out. Apparently, she had intended to give us a lot of souvenirs from our overseas trip the day we cut ties with her, but because of what had happened, she was unable to do so. She had given out treats and other souvenirs to neighbors. However, the unmanaged and long-neglected souvenirs had expired and spoiled. Some of the neighbors who ate them without knowing this fell ill from stomach pains, and some even collapsed from allergic shock. What? How could this happen? I was so surprised that I lost my words. Yes, that's what happened. Apparently, she's being sued by a neighbor, and I heard it from Kate. Kate is the mother-in-law's name. And Aunt Christy is her sister. Did my mother-in-law know that the neighbor had allergies? It seems she did know. The neighbor was allergic to walnuts, and she confirmed with Kate that there were no walnuts in these gifts. But she lied about it. Wow! It's just like something my mother-in-law would do. She probably thought an allergy was like a simple dislike. So now it's a big problem, and she's being sued for deliberately causing harm. I'm really shocked, and I've decided to cut ties with Kate too. She's apparently being sued for quite a bit of money, so she might call you for help, so I wanted to tell you first. I see. Thank you very much for contacting me. Don't feel obligated to help if she calls, it's all her own fault. And, although it's late, congratulations on the birth. Take care of yourself. Thank you. It's been hot lately, so Aunt Christy, take care of yourself as well. And so, we hung up. That night, when Mike returned home, he looked exhausted and asked if I had heard from Aunt Christy. Yes, you mean about your mom? Yeah. I thought she might cause trouble someday, but I never thought it'd come to this. It was the right decision to keep you and Tim away from her. I wonder if the neighbors are okay? Especially the one with the walnut allergy. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to have been too serious. My mother really did something unbelievable. But I'm not gonna help her, and she needs to reflect on what she did. Amy, you can ignore her if she calls. She'll probably ask for money. Okay, I understand. Just as Mike said, I earnestly hoped my mother-in-law would reflect on her actions. A few days later, as Aunt Christy and Mike had predicted, a call came from my mother-in-law asking for help. At first, I ignored it, but the incessant ringing finally forced me to answer. Hello? Amy, listen to me. I'm being sued even though I didn't do anything wrong. Don't you feel sorry for me? My mother-in-law seemed to have no remorse. She was saying that she had done nothing wrong, and her lack of understanding about what was truly wrong was frightening. We've cut ties, so please don't call again. Goodbye. I said coldly, about to hang up, but my mother-in-law hastily stopped me. Wait. Don't hang up yet. Please lend me some money, I'm in trouble. You've been traveling abroad a lot, so you must have some money. I've spent so much on overseas trips, and I don't have much savings left, and if I pay the compensation, I'll be broke and unable to live. Mike won't answer my calls. Even over the phone, I could tell she was getting desperate. Even if you say that, there's nothing I can do. I can't lend you a single cent. Do you really think I'm going to help you after what you did? I'll apologize. I was wrong, I'm sorry, okay? Just lend me some money, even a little. My mother-in-law apologized with a reckless and indifferent attitude. There's no value in an insincere apology. Pay the neighbors the compensation they deserve and apologize properly. Goodbye. I firmly told her and hung up the phone. After that, my mother-in-law somehow paid the compensation, and my in-laws, who were left penniless, put their family home up for sale. But since it was a very old house, they couldn't sell it for a decent amount of money. My in-laws had to move to a rundown apartment, and many hardships awaited them. Their retirement savings were gone, and they no longer had the means to travel abroad. Both of my in-laws started working part-time jobs, diligently working every day to somehow make ends meet, but they no longer have a carefree life, and it seems like they're under a lot of stress. The once happy couple's faces have turned sour, and my father-in-law yells at my mother-in-law, saying, "It's all your fault," and apparently, that yelling can be heard outside the apartment. My mother-in-law has been calling and emailing frequently, complaining, "Your father-in-law said such horrible things to me. He used to be so kind, can you believe how awful this is? We're fighting every day, and it's like hell." But since it's become quite annoying, Mike and I have blocked calls from my in-laws. Meanwhile, we're moving near my parents' home, and we'll be relocating. And, we found out that I'm pregnant with our second child. Of course, we have no intention of letting my in-laws meet our child. We are living peacefully, and our whole family is eagerly waiting for the birth of our second child. After giving birth to twins, I was staying at my friend Michelle's house when I received a phone call from my husband, Liam. He was asking when I planned to return home. Noticing that something was off, I decided to return home. To my surprise, a large sum of money had been withdrawn from our joint bank account without my consent. To add to that, Liam, who was supposed to be at work, was at home. I could hear voices coming from his study. "Boss, is this okay?" bringing me here when your wife isn't home. It's fine. She won't be back for another month. Sorry about the mess. It's fine, I'll do it. It's terrible that you're a housewife and not doing any chores. Yeah, and she left the house to be with another man. I want to get a divorce as soon as possible. After a while, I heard some indelicate sounds coming from Selena, so I hit the record button on my cell phone. After recording for a few minutes, I quietly left the house. As I walked down the dark street, rage boiled up from the pit of my stomach. I gritted my teeth and murmured to myself. I'm here desperately trying to raise newborn twins, and he's inviting a subordinate into our house and having an affair? I will never forgive him. You better be prepared. My name is Julia. I'm a 33-year-old housewife. I met my husband Liam 4 years ago. I was invited to a drinking party to fill the numbers, and since I don't like alcohol, I was sipping in a corner when Liam, who was organizing the event, took care of me throughout the party, even when ordering food. On the way home, I was surprised when Liam told me, "I'd like to meet you again, just the two of us." After several meetings, we began dating and got married the following year. We started a happy married life. However, it seemed that his mother, Marjorie, didn't like me. I don't remember ever being spoken to or smiled at by Marjorie, not when we first met before our marriage or when we returned home for holidays. As I am also quite shy, when Marjorie and I are alone together, our conversation doesn't flow well and an uncomfortable atmosphere always ensues. "Hello, I've been to the cemetery earlier." "Oh, have you?" "It's quite hot today. Tomorrow's supposed to be 4 degrees hotter." "Well, it's summer. It's always like this." 2 years passed without closing the gap between Marjorie and myself, when I had a few days of feeling unwell and decided to visit an obstetrician-gynecologist. There, I was informed of my pregnancy. To my surprise, I was told that I could hear 2 heartbeats. "Wait, twins?" "They're fraternal." "Congratulations." I was over the moon. However, I was the only one excited. It was from this point on that Liam's behavior began to change drastically. I always wanted twins. I was engrossed in comics, movies, and novels where twins played a major role, and whenever I saw them on the streets, I would naturally find myself watching them. And now I was about to become a mother of twins. It was a dream come true and I was so excited. But as I researched more on the internet, I was overcome by a great sense of anxiety. From my friends' stories, it seemed quite challenging to bear and raise one child, let alone 2 for the first time. Could I really bring up the kids properly? On top of that, the physical burden is said to be doubled, and the risk of falling ill seems to be high. As I was pondering, I suddenly realized I wouldn't be raising them alone, Liam would be there too. Liam would probably be wide-eyed, saying, "Twins!" He's been saying he wants kids soon, so he'll probably be delighted. Excitedly waiting for Liam to come home, who recently had a sudden increase in overtime and working on weekends. "I'm home. You haven't gone to bed yet?" "Welcome home. You see, I'm thinking about quitting my job soon." Why's that?" "Because we're having a baby." Turning around, Liam's eyes bulged for a moment. But he quickly put on a forced smile. "So, you finally got pregnant?" "It's twins." As I announced with my heart pounding, Liam's reaction was unexpected. After opening his eyes wide, he grimaced unpleasantly and spat out. "Are you serious? That's gonna cost twice as much. Give me a break." Stunned, I am then asked by Liam, "So, boy? Or girl?" "It seems we won't know that until they get a bit bigger." "I'd prefer a boy. Girls cost more with things like prom. Please, let it be a boy. We don't need a girl." He said this to my belly, which had not even started to swell yet, and then went off to take a shower. I was flabbergasted. What was that comment just now? It's hard to believe these were the words of the man who said, "I can't wait to have a baby. A honeymoon baby would be great." However, before I had time to be down, I was plunged into days of suffering from morning sickness. The dizziness and nausea were worse than expected, and every day was a rush to the bathroom at the smell of oil or rice. It was fatal for me who was working at a restaurant, and I eventually had to quit. Although I could hardly eat myself, I prepared meals and packed lunches for Liam as usual, considering his health. However, Liam didn't show any signs of concern for my condition. On the contrary, he started complaining. "The number of items in the lunchbox seems a bit less than usual, huh? Sorry, the smell of cooking makes me feel sick." "You're not just using morning sickness as an excuse to skimp, are you?" And when I returned home and was lying down with a pale face, he always made a sarcastic remark. "You're lucky, you can lounge around all day and still eat thanks to me. I feel bad when I stand up. But I'm still doing the laundry and preparing the meals. That's a housewife's duty, it's only natural. You're being too soft on yourself, it's not like you're sick." Also, he didn't seem to like the idea of going to the clinic every 2 weeks. "There's a risk 10 times higher than a normal pregnancy, which seems to make complications more likely." Yeah, so basically you're saying it's gonna cost us a lot of money. All the money I've sweated to earn is gonna be taken by you and our twins, huh? I was honestly surprised by his reaction, I hadn't expected it. Being bad at handling finances, when we decided to get married, I confessed this to Liam and asked him to manage everything from our savings to daily expenses. Liam works for a large corporation, and his earnings are above the average American annual income. So, even after setting aside savings, living expenses, and my allowance, he should still have plenty of spending money for himself. That's why I didn't understand why he would say such harsh things. Over time, I began to feel guilty about being pregnant. When I finally reached the stable period of my pregnancy, I told Marjorie, my father at home, and my sister-in-law Michelle about my pregnancy. As expected, Marjorie's reaction was lukewarm. "Let me know when you've decided on the due date." Okay. Well, it's more relaxing to get a straightforward reaction than being commanded to give birth to a male heir or something. In contrast, Michelle had the exact opposite reaction over the phone. "Congratulations! Twins! No way! That's so amazing that we're gonna have twins in our family. I'll support you as much as I can, so don't hesitate to ask for help." Her warm reaction, the first since my pregnancy, made me tear up. "Julia, are you crying?" "I'm fine. Please give me advice again." I actually wanted to vent to Michelle about Liam's cold attitude right away, but I thought it might make the already bad relationship between the siblings even worse, so I decided to put up with it a little longer. But Liam's verbal abuse towards me was only getting worse. Lately, he would look at my growing belly with disgust and sigh. "Julia, you're getting too fat. Other pregnant women aren't showing this much." "Well, I have 2 babies inside me, so this much is normal. I've only gained about 22 pounds, and the doctor has told me to refrain from exercise because it can lead to premature labor. But you know, it's disgusting to see you so thin, but your belly is the only thing that's grown." I couldn't believe my ears. "You've changed so much that you've lost all your femininity." He chuckled snidely and threw his shirt at me. "Press this once you've washed it." "I can't because of my big belly." "Put it in the laundry basket." "You're really useless." Fine, I'll put it in the basket," he said, looking annoyed, picked up his socks and went to the bathroom. I let out a deep sigh. I was really fed up with Liam's recent behavior. But I can't rely on my family either. After my mother passed away due to illness, my father remarried the following year and has kids, so there's no place for me. Thinking about life after the twins are born makes my chest feel like it's going to be crushed with anxiety, but I have no one else to rely on. So I had no choice but to endure. When I went for a checkup the following week, the doctor told me to be admitted to the hospital early. Considering the risk of premature birth, they suggested a C-section as soon as I entered the 9th month. "You're not planning on going back to your parents' home for childbirth, are you?" "No, I'm not. My parents' house is in the neighboring city, but I never intended to live with them since I don't get along well with my stepmother and brother. Moreover, I'd probably worry myself sick if I had to spend my time in my in-laws' house with my mother-in-law. That's when Michelle suggested, "Then why don't you stay with me? As you know, Julia, my husband is currently posted overseas, and my high school-age sons live in a dormitory. I work from home and have a flexible schedule, so I can help you out with a lot." "Really? Thank you so much." When I reported to Liam that evening, he made a very displeased face. "What, are you going into the hospital already? Who's going to take care of me while you're gone? Are you going to buy ready-made meals or cook for yourself? This is going to cost me extra money." However, the following evening, he came home in a surprisingly good mood. Touching my belly, which he had hardly ever paid attention to before, he gave me a broad grin. "Hey, I'm working for you guys, so make sure to be born safely. Here, this is your sister's favorite local wine. Give it to her as a gift. Will you come to visit after the baby is born?" "I will, once I finish my work." But he didn't keep his word. "Liam, the baby is born safely. It's a healthy girl." He didn't respond to the message I sent, and it seemed he even ignored Michelle's phone calls. Marjorie, who's usually aloof, rushed to the hospital and had tears in her eyes at the sight of the twins in their incubators. Every time I saw other husbands happily holding their babies, my heart ached. I wondered if Liam wasn't happy about the birth of his child. Fortunately, the twins were very healthy, and we were able to be discharged on the 8th day. The day after discharge. While I was busy nursing and changing diapers, I received a phone call from Liam. "Hey, when are you coming back?" I was so disappointed that his first words were this, considering he had been ignoring all my calls. But I held back my complaints and simply stated, "I will be staying with Michelle for about another month. You can't even take care of your husband. Let me know when you're coming back." When the call ended, Michelle, who had been listening on speakerphone, frowned. "What's his problem, acting so high and mighty?" "He's always like this. He shows no interest in the baby and keeps talking about how it's going to cost money." Despite them being so adorable. As Michelle cast a loving glance at the twins sleeping soundly in the back bed, she frowned. "He started talking about money all the time when we found out we were having a baby. In fact, he seemed disgruntled at first about me staying here, but then he came home in a good mood the next day." Michelle suggested to me, who was lost in thought, with a stern look. "Something seems fishy, Julia. You might want to check his bank account and his room." Following Michelle's advice, I returned home while the twins were sleeping. It was daytime, so Liam was at work. When I opened the app of the bank account, I found, just as Michelle had suspected, more than $10,000 that was supposed to be savings for the child had been withdrawn. As I stood there dumbfounded, I heard a young woman's voice from the other side of the wall. "Boss, is this okay? You're sneaking me in while your wife isn't around." I gasped. Was he really bringing another woman into his study while I was away? "It's fine, she won't be back for another month. Sorry, the house is a mess." The sweet tone that erupted from his usually harsh mouth sent chills down my spine. "It's fine. I'll do it. It's terrible that you're a housewife and not doing any chores." "She's just a homewrecker. I wish I could get a divorce already." The intimacy of the conversation was clear. After a brief pause, I heard Selena's unashamed voice, so I took out my cell phone and hit the record button. After recording for a few minutes, I quietly left the house. As I walked down the sidewalk, the initial shock subsided and a boiling anger rose from the pit of my stomach. I clenched my teeth and murmured to myself, "I'm here desperately raising newborn twins, and he's inviting his subordinate to our home for an affair? Screw this, I will never forgive him." Be prepared. When I asked Michelle to go shopping in the afternoon and took a nap with the twins, the doorbell rang. When I checked through the intercom, Liam looked irritated. Rubbing my eyes, I went to answer and Liam started shouting at me. "Stop sleeping and come back to do the housework. If you refuse, we're getting a divorce." "I've already hired the divorce lawyer, though." "What?" As I presented the business card of my lawyer I brought from the dining room to Liam, his face twitched. "I'd be at a disadvantage without an agreement on child support and asset division." Idiot, there's no way we're really getting a divorce. There's no way you, a jobless woman with twins, can survive without me. I'll let your words slide this time, so get ready to go back. The twins woke up at Liam's loud voice and started fussing. As I returned to the living room and picked up one, they stopped crying, but the other one continued, so they both started crying in the end. Liam, their father, should soothe them, but he was glaring at the baby bed with an annoyed expression. Stop the crying, it's too noisy. Unfortunately, I only have 2 arms. By the way, Liam, don't you want a divorce? You could flirt as much as you want if you divorce. Liam went pale at once. How do you know about that? She was just consulting me about work, there's nothing suspicious. Is that so? I smiled thinly and Liam, looking panicked, asked me. You're really Julia, right? Why? You're acting like your sister. Julia was obedient and always listened to me, she was a quiet woman. I snickered. Dad is not reliable at all. If I'm the only one who can protect these adorable children, then as their mother, I have no choice but to become strong. Liam suddenly shifted his gaze to the children, as if a thought had just occurred to him. By the way, what did we name these little ones again? I was stunned. Didn't he look at all the names I had sent him? I was profoundly disappointed. After putting the first child, who had stopped crying, to bed, and while rocking the still fussy second one, I laid into Liam. I guess that's true. You wouldn't even bother looking when I showed you the written suggestions for names before they were born. You even ignored the names I sent you in a message yesterday. You were probably too busy cozying up with Selena. It's just work. I don't really care, just choose something and get the birth certificate sorted. I exploded with anger at Liam's carefree attitude. Don't you dare say the children's names don't matter. Hey, watch your mouth. I'm the one making money for you guys. I stared straight back at the red-faced Liam. In the past, when he yelled at her like this, my body would stiffen and I would become timid. But I couldn't afford to back down now, not for the children. The only reason you can focus on your work is because I'm holding down the fort at home. That's a woman's job. Liam huffed pompously. Just hurry up and get home. How long do you plan on shirking your housework duties? I told you, I have some preparations to make and can't come home yet. Come back in a week. What a hassle, fine, got it. Liam stormed out, his footsteps loud and angry. A week later, I received a message from Liam. I asked Michelle to look after the twins and waited for Liam with my lawyer. When Liam arrived, he was taken aback at the sight of the lawyer. Hey, who's this guy? He's my attorney. I had to ask him over since I can't leave the twins alone for long. Sorry, Michelle, to interrupt your day off. I'm more than happy to get all to myself with these adorable twins. You both take your time. With a smile, Michelle headed upstairs where the twins were. While Liam was confused, I lined up the photographs handed to me by the private detective across the living room table. I played a recording of Selena's candid voice on my phone, which turned Liam pale. So, you were just consulting on work? Using the money meant for the children at a seaside resort and amusement parks? While I'm up all night breastfeeding and changing diapers, your life seems so lavish. I'm jealous. I said sarcastically, glaring at him with eyes marked by lack of sleep. Liam looked around, forcing a strained smile. That's just what mothers do. You're crafty. Have you been preparing this for a week? I'll divorce you, so please return the $12,000 you've squandered. Plus, I'll be taking child support as well. That's too much! Liam shouted as he stood up. He spewed out selfish reasons at a rapid-fire pace. It's your fault for ignoring me while you were absorbed with the babies. Despite being a wife, you didn't take care of your husband, you slacked off on housework even before you were pregnant, stayed at your sister's house even after discharge. Isn't that your fault too? The lawyer gave me a troubled shrug. I turned back to Liam and asked calmly. Shall we take this to court then? Yeah, do whatever you want. It will cost you more, is that all right? Huh? Speaking of which, can Julia afford it? At Liam's question, I smiled. I'll use my savings from when I was single. By the way, did you know? The investigation fee for the private detective has to be paid by you. After all, it's your infidelity and abusive behavior that are causing the divorce. Liam bulged his eyes. He leaned toward me, spit flying as he shouted. When have I ever been abusive? Enough with the lies! Do you want me to play the recording of your abusive language right here? That's when the lawyer cut in. Sorry to interrupt. The other party is a subordinate, right? If rumors of the divorce spread in the company, I suspect Liam might be demoted to a subsidiary. It would be best to keep as much money as possible. The color drained from Liam's face. For Liam, who was on the fast track to promotion, being shifted away from the main office would be a death blow. Suddenly looking panicked, Liam began to make excuses. Hey, forgive me. It was my first affair, and it only lasted a year. If you divorce with twins, you're bound to struggle. I'm prepared for the struggle. At my curt reply, Liam gave a forced smile. So there's no divorce then, it's hard on the kids. He tried the sympathy card next, but I remained silent with my lips pressed together. Please, Julia. I've worked my way up the ladder, it's just not fair to lose everything over one affair. You reap what you sow, don't you? So, if you forgive me, it'll be okay. Please, don't go for a divorce, consider it as a favor to me. At that moment, the door burst open. To our surprise, it was Marjorie, standing like a warrior. The usually stoic woman was blushing and trembling. Liam rushed over to Marjorie and started complaining. Mom, you have to convince Julia. She's been crying, saying she wants a divorce because I had an affair while she was pregnant. She's been neglecting me, being so engrossed with the baby, she bears some responsibility too. Shut up, you fool! Marjorie shouted before Liam could finish speaking. Her voice was unusually loud, shocking both Liam and me. Marjorie continued to berate Liam, veins popping on her forehead. From what I've heard, you only care about yourself. Don't you feel any responsibility as a father? When Michelle told me you hadn't visited the hospital, I wondered if you were really that busy. But to have an affair with a subordinate. I'm speechless. Marjorie further rebuked Liam with a stern tone. Your wife is carrying 2 lives, do you think she has time to cater to your needs? Can't you take care of yourself at your age, Liam? If you want to play around so much, just be single and have all the fun. It wouldn't make a difference whether a father like you is there or not in the future. Liam, with tears in his eyes, kneeled down on the wooden floor in defeat. Marjorie approached me and lowered her voice. Julia, I apologize for Liam's behavior. I knew you might feel uncomfortable talking to me directly about the twins, so I asked Liam about it since you were pregnant. But he never replied. So I had no choice but to ask Michelle about the due date, how the babies were growing, everything. I was taken aback by Marjorie's honesty. My mother suggested that you should stay at our place after you are discharged from the hospital, thinking that you might feel uncomfortable at your husband's house. Marjorie. Tears filled my eyes and I looked at Marjorie with gratitude. Both Mom and Julia aren't good at expressing themselves, are they? You talk too much, Michelle. Michelle spoke to me with a kinder tone than usual. Julia, you should divorce Liam quickly. Me and Michelle are here to support you. You will feel relieved without such a useless person. Both Mom and Sis have been really harsh. Because it's the truth. After being scolded by both, Liam obediently agreed to my demands regarding child support. As my lawyer predicted, Liam's divorce became the talk of the office. When Selena, who had learned about the birth of the twins, found out that she had been played during my pregnancy, she exposed her relationship with Liam out of spite. The rumors reached the ears of the boss in no time, and Liam was transferred to a branch office for disturbing the office's discipline. Despite Liam being a high earner, he squandered all his savings doting on Selena. As a result, we had to sell the condo we lived in and moved to a rundown apartment. The rumors about Liam having an affair with a young subordinate while his wife was pregnant spread in the branch office as well, making it unbearable for him. He ended up resigning shortly thereafter. Now, he's working from early morning till late night at several part-time jobs to make ends meet and pay child support, being reprimanded by a manager who is younger than him. I handed over the apartment to Liam in exchange for half the price, and moved to my in-laws' house. Until the twins grow up, I figured we could rely on the support of Marjorie, who has plenty of time thanks to her pension. Of course, I'd have to work too. When I explained the situation to my former workplace, they asked me to return, and so it was decided. I found an opening at a daycare center near work, and so I leave the twins there while I work full-time during the weekdays. Whenever the twins get a fever and I can't take off work, or when I need to go shopping, I ask Marjorie to babysit. You don't have to hesitate at all. I'm actually really grateful that you let me see my grandchildren even though I'm divorced. Marjorie has always been a woman of few words and not very affectionate, but she shows a beaming smile when she's with the twins, which makes me feel closer to her. Michelle, who comes over on her days off, might be a big part of why that is. Mom, how about you show us a fake smile once in a while? Is that so? Marjorie smirks and Michelle freezes. Scary. You look like a criminal. Did you say something? You're just fine the way you are, Mom. I couldn't help but chuckle at that exchange. I used to think Marjorie hated me, which made it painful to be around her. But that was a huge misunderstanding. Thanks to Liam, who didn't care about the children being gone, the unnecessary stress disappeared, and I could enjoy my days. If one day the children want to meet their father, I'm considering arranging a meeting with Liam. Even without a father, as long as the twins receive plenty of love from their mother, aunt, and grandmother, they'll grow up healthily. Watching my children shower Marjorie and Michelle with innocent smiles, I was certain of it. I believe laws exist to protect the people of the world. However, it's also a fact that there are those who manipulate the law to commit wrongdoing. To combat such evils, perhaps knowledge of the law is essential. My name is Jessica. Justice is the order of society, a saying from the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. I understand what order means. It signifies the structure that keeps society in a harmonious state. But what is justice? It's a term indicating the right reasoning and correctness of human actions. Yet, what's deemed right can vary based on historical context, regional characteristics, religion, race, and other factors. For instance, during the medieval times, defeating one's enemies might have been seen as just. For believers of a certain religion, upholding its teachings might be the highest form of justice. But in today's society, harming an enemy would be a crime, and those not affiliated with a religion might not see justice in its teachings. This has turned into a philosophical discussion. I wonder how Aristotle would explain it then. I believe that creating rules for a society where everyone can live in peace and ensuring everyone abides by them might be the justice that's needed in today's world. I've always pondered about justice. I think a lot of it comes from my father's influence, but maybe it's also due to my inherent nature or temperament. My dad was a straightforward man who despised dishonesty. He would often break down complex topics about how one should behave into simpler terms for me and my younger brother, who's 4 years my junior. Even as a child, I found his words convincing. They resonated deeply within me, and I was profoundly influenced by them. Considering my inherent temperament, being his daughter, I guess my dad's influence is genetically the strongest. Around the time I entered middle school, I became interested in law. Back then, several TV dramas revolving around prosecutors, judges, and lawyers were broadcasted consecutively, and they were all the rage. Even though I had a strong sense of justice, I was still a typical middle school girl, so I jumped on the bandwagon. What set me apart was my genuine interest in the job descriptions and pondering how I would handle certain situations. Of course, I was also drawn to the popular actors and became a fan of the bands singing the theme songs, just like any regular viewer. But my fascination gravitated more and more towards the legal world and the judiciary. I don't publicly admit that my interest was piqued because of the consecutive legal dramas that year, as it might make me seem fickle. Even if I was just a drama enthusiast, the fact remains that it captured my heart, and I aimed for and successfully got into a law school. Not to toot my own horn, but after immersing myself in law studies for 4 years, I graduated with excellent grades. After graduation, I took a couple of years to explore jobs that piqued my interest at the time, gaining life experience. Eventually, my focus returned to the legal field. I managed to secure a position at the main office of the American Bar Association, which oversees all the lawyers' associations in the country. Working in the legal field broadened my perspective towards society. I became deeply engrossed in my work, trying to figure out how I could help the vulnerable who felt helpless against the world's injustices. Before I knew it, I was nearing 30. Around that time, the president of the bar association I worked for suggested that I move to a lawyers' association in New York, which had a myriad of issues. According to him, they needed my expertise to help rectify the situation in the bustling city. Feeling honored and intrigued by the new opportunity, I accepted his offer. Originally, the Bar Association is a private organization that guides and supervises its member lawyers. To practice as a lawyer in the U.S., one must be affiliated with a local bar association. To work as a lawyer, one needs to be registered in the Lawyers Directory, which is done through the local bar association apart from the American Bar Association. Lawyers typically work in law firms, so the Bar Association doesn't directly handle cases from clients. My role was to manage the legal consultation service for the public provided by the Bar Association. There are many more people facing legal troubles than one might think. I had a strong desire to help as many of them as possible. Each law firm or individual lawyer has their specialty. Like criminal cases, civil cases, traffic accidents, divorce issues, and so on. In the area overseen by our Bar Association, there was a law firm that was particularly dedicated to offering legal consultations to the public. Of course, there was a business aspect to it, trying to convert consultations into actual cases. But their proactive involvement in less profitable areas clearly showed their commitment to helping the public. John, a lawyer from that firm, was also actively involved in the Bar Association's legal consultation service. I always admired John's approach, which was clearly on the side of the citizens.
Jessica, our consultation is until 5 p.m. today, right? Let's try to accommodate as many people as possible.
Thank you, as always. I think we'll have more visitors than usual today, so it's gonna be busy. John would listen carefully to each client and provide precise advice. In some cases, just giving advice wasn't enough. He'd then explain the necessary fees and suggest using the services of a law firm. It wasn't just about profit, his clear stance was to help those in need. Of all the lawyers I've met, I consider him to be one of the very best. As John and I interacted more, we became close, discussing various matters, including work. Once, he mentioned a case he was handling and was unsure about how to proceed. I offered to listen. And he shared the details, even though he might have thought it pointless to discuss with an administrative staff like me. Perhaps he was just venting, but I was glad he confided in me and wanted to help in any way I could. From our conversation, I identified 2 main points and potential solutions. Carefully choosing my words to avoid sounding presumptuous, I shared my thoughts, and he genuinely appreciated my input.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. Thanks, that's really helpful.
Seeing his genuine smile, I rediscovered his kindness and rich personality. About 2 weeks later, he approached me with a gleam in his eye.
Thanks for the advice the other day, Jessica. I followed your suggestions, and everything worked out. The client was satisfied, and it boosted my reputation.
I'm glad I could help.
But you know, you're really knowledgeable about the law and problem solving. Did you ever work as a paralegal somewhere?
Oh, no, I just dabbled in law studies a bit. It helps with my administrative duties. I was evasive in my response.
Anyway, you're really smart. As a token of my appreciation, would you mind me taking you out to dinner?
I hesitated but eventually agreed to his invitation, partly out of obligation. I felt a bit overwhelmed, but deep down, there was a genuine feeling of happiness. He took me to a chic, mature restaurant, a place I'd never been to before. He was a great conversationalist, discussing his work and other hobbies passionately, engaging me in a pleasant back and forth. It wasn't just a one-sided conversation. The back and forth exchange of words, drawing me into the conversation, felt comforting. As the evening was winding down, he said,
"Thanks for joining me tonight. I invited you under the pretense of thanking you for your advice, but truth be told, I've wanted to ask you out for a long time. I don't want this to be a one-time thing."
After a brief pause, he looked me in the eyes and earnestly said,
"Jessica, I love you."
I was taken aback, having never heard such words from a man before. But after a moment, I managed to say,
"I'm so happy to hear you say that."
Our relationship blossomed, and every day felt fresh and exciting. John often consulted me about his work, and my suggestions seemed to hit the mark, helping his career thrive. Seeing him happy made me happy. Could this be what they call being a significant other? I felt my face turning red at the thought. The thought made me blush, especially since the term may refer to a couple loving each other so much, and it even made me think of marriage. It felt like fate when John presented me with a ring, formally asking me to marry him. I silently thanked the heavens. And so, we got married. Becoming a wife was a surreal experience, something I hadn't imagined until recently. My parents and younger brother congratulated us, and I felt truly blessed. My uncle, who had always been fond of me, seemed a bit downcast. My father explained that he probably felt lonely seeing his niece, whom he considered like a daughter, getting married. Married life had its challenges, but navigating them was part of the fun. The satisfaction of discovering something new together was a clear sign of happiness. I continued working, and John was supportive. John had always been supportive, which motivated me even more to take care of our home. He'd often say, "Since we both work, let's cooperate on household chores. That's what being a couple is all about." His kind words always touched my heart. As we celebrated our first wedding anniversary, we gave a toast to our journey together. I've heard the first anniversary is called the paper wedding. It's still fragile like paper, but I hope that as the years go by, it'll strengthen to silver or gold. Lately, I've been concerned about John. Firstly, he stopped working at the public consultation desk. He hasn't been attending the bar association meetings, and it seems he's consciously stepping back from front desk duties at the law firm. I guess John has his own vision and thoughts about his work. It's lonely that he hasn't shared it with me, but I understand men sometimes want to make their own decisions. What's been bothering me more is that John's been coming home late. When we first got married, unless there was unexpected overtime, he'd rush home to spend time with me. But lately, he's been coming home later and later, and it's not unusual for him to return after midnight. "John, are you really that busy at work? I'm worried about your health. Please try to come home earlier."
"It's work, what can I do? I'm fine, so don't worry too much."
"Don't worry too much?" As your wife, it's natural for me to be concerned, especially with you coming home after midnight so often.
"I'm working hard, isn't that enough? Anyway, I have a business trip this weekend."
"A business trip? What kind of case requires that?" "Ugh, you're so nagging." "I'm going because it's necessary. All you need to do is see me off with a smile." John shooed me dismissively and retreated to our room. True to his word, John left for an overnight business trip that weekend. While lawyers do sometimes have overnight trips, from what I know, it's pretty rare. When John returned, he gave me a regional specialty as a souvenir, but it didn't make me happy. His late nights continued, with occasional weekend work and trips. Though not often, there were times he had to leave the house for work on weekends or for business trips. Once, I found a long strand of hair on his suit. Was it just a coincidence? But what kind of coincidence would lead to that? My mind raced, but I couldn't find any answers. Then, I witnessed something undeniable. On a day John said he was working, I decided to head into town for a change of scenery. Walking towards the downtown where my favorite store was located, I froze when I saw a familiar figure emerging from an alley. It was John, who was supposed to be at work. It was odd enough seeing him here at this time. Moreover, John was walking with a woman next to him. In addition to that, he was walking hand in hand with the woman. I was surprisingly calm.
So that's how it is,
I thought to myself. Without realizing, I began following them. After about 10 minutes, they disappeared into an entertainment district. That night, I sat on the living room couch, waiting for John. He returned around 12:30 a.m., humming a tune. When he noticed me, he jumped, exclaiming,
"Whoa.
"Welcome home, John. You seem to have had fun. Tired? You were awake? It's just work, not exactly fun. I went out today and saw you entering a suspicious place with a woman. How long have you been cheating?" John flinched for a moment but quickly regained his composure. "What are you talking about? It's a misunderstanding. If you saw us, you should have said hi. She's a client, and we just talked at that lounge. That's all." "Oh, really? It's interesting that you had to get a key at the front desk just to go to a lounge. I wasn't aware of such a system." I spoke with a cold detachment. "You saw that too? Even so, you can't just accuse me of cheating. What if I was just escorting her to her room?" "How kind of you, especially for a client." John snapped back, clearly irritated. "Ugh, this is so annoying. There's no proof I'm cheating. Actually, this is a good opportunity. Let's get divorced. I'm tired of you."
John, did you really feel that way about me? It's only been a little over a year since we got married. Is there no love left?
Facing my question, John's demeanor changed dramatically, as if he was a different person. "Love? If there was any, it was just a little in the beginning. Well, you're a good-looking woman for your age, and I thought it'd be nice to have you. Plus, you seem smart, maybe you'd be useful."
That's a harsh way to put it, for your age.
It's the truth. I thought you'd be useful, but you weren't. So, I'm done with you. I'll find someone else who can be more useful to me. I had thought John was a wonderful man when we first met, but maybe this was his true self. With my limited experience in love, I couldn't see through him. It was frustrating.
So, you cheated because of that?
Come on, how many times do I have to say it? Do you have any proof? Our divorce is just irreconcilable differences. A split on moity-moity status.
Just say it in plain English, 50-50.
But that's not the case, is it?
You'll pay more spousal support than me when we get a divorce since you earn more than me as a lawyer.
I'm not going to file a divorce paper unless the property is divided equally. But if you can prove cheating, I'll give you $500,000. John seemed confident he hadn't slipped up. But I couldn't help but laugh. I had tried to remain calm and collected, but this was too much. "Are you sure about that?" John looked shocked at my sudden change in demeanor. "Your mistress, was her name Mia? The receptionist at the firm? You're after her because her father runs a big law firm, right?" "How do you know about Mia?" "I'm sorry, even though we're married, I haven't told you everything about me. I have certain skills. Like this, for instance." I handed John a piece of paper. Upon seeing it, he looked horrified. It was a written statement from Mia, promising she would never see John again. After witnessing their rendezvous, I waited for them. I had intended to confront them, waiting in front of the building. I had intended to catch them as they came out, but they quickly split off to the left and right as they exited the door. It was late at night when John came home, so he must have gone somewhere to play after that, but that didn't matter anyway. I approached Mia, who was alone, and informed her about what I knew regarding the affair. Upon realizing my identity, Mia was visibly shaken, so I took her to a nearby diner. There, I had her write a statement promising she would never have an inappropriate relationship with John again. I chose a public place to make it clear I wasn't threatening or coercing her. Seeing the statement, John exclaimed, "When did you get this? It doesn't explicitly say you cheated, but the content implies it. It'll be strong evidence in my favor. You, being a brilliant lawyer, should know that." John, clutching the statement, began to tremble. Of course, I had made copies, so even if he destroyed it, it wouldn't matter. I then presented more evidence of their affair, chat logs, receipts from their dates, and more.
When did you get all this?
His once confident demeanor had vanished, and he looked pale.
I'll be happy to get that $500,000.
My investigative skills and knowledge were honed during the 2 years I worked at my father's detective agency after college. My father's sense of justice was embodied in his work, uncovering wrongdoing in society. I had always been interested in my father's work, partly influenced by a detective TV show I watched at the time. Perhaps my motivations haven't changed much since I aspired to join the legal profession. Regardless, my experience proved invaluable in my subsequent career. I then slowly took a badge from my pocket and pinned it to my chest.
Why do you have that badge?
John's eyes widened in disbelief. The badge I wore was that of an attorney.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm also a lawyer, just like you.
I had passed the bar exam while still in law school. Normally, one would become a judicial trainee after graduation, but I had chosen to train at my father's detective agency for 2 years before becoming a trainee and eventually a lawyer. When I first got my job, the president of the bar association that oversees all lawyers in every state was my uncle, Robert. Wanting to work for the greater good with a broad perspective, I joined his firm, leveraging our family connection. Under his guidance, I gained experience as a lawyer while also being affiliated with his law firm. Normally, juggling both roles would be impossible, but with Robert's support, I managed. It was physically demanding, but my investigative skills, honed at my father's agency, often came in handy in my legal work. Years later, I had made a name for myself in the legal world. Having gained a reputation, I moved to the New York Bar Association at my uncle's suggestion. While I continued to work at Robert's firm, I also became a member of the disciplinary committee of the Bar Association. When a lawyer commits misconduct or violates the law, the case first goes to the ethics committee of the Bar Association they belong to. If the ethics committee determines the lawyer's actions are inexcusable, the disciplinary committee then deliberates on the punishment. Being in a position to judge lawyers, I had refrained from revealing this to my husband, John. As I revealed more and more, John was in a state of shock.
John, it seems you're in deep trouble. Someone with a conscience has reported you, and the disciplinary committee is already in motion.
What John had been doing was essentially guiding people on tax evasion. He would identify financially struggling individuals at public consultation desks, cunningly propose tax evasion, and earn money by teaching them the methods.
How did you find out about all this?
John's cries echoed around us. Thinking he wouldn't get caught was naive. Soon after, John was arrested by the police. His tax evasion guidance wasn't a solo act. He was the ringleader of a large, organized group. The investigation was led by the NYPD's 2nd Investigation Division, and the prosecutor in charge was my younger brother, Mike. Mike, like me, had pursued a career in law but had become a prosecutor. Thanks to his achievements in this case, he would be transferred to the Special Investigation Department of the prosecutor's office, which he had always wanted. The disciplinary committee is still deliberating on John's case, but he's likely to face the harshest punishment, disbarment. If disbarred, he'd lose his license to practice law for 3 years. In the past, only one person has been readmitted after such a penalty. Moreover, if he's sentenced to imprisonment after the trial, he'll lose his license permanently. John and I finalized our divorce. While I won't get the full $500,000 since it was just a verbal promise, I intend to claim the property as much as possible. However, it's doubtful whether John, now a convicted felon and unemployed, will be able to pay. Uncle Robert told me he was sorry. He had received information that something shady might be happening under the current Bar Association's watch and had hoped I could uncover it. That's why he had suggested I move. At the time, he didn't know the specifics or who was involved, but he had been uneasy when I married John, a member of the Bar Association. It all made sense, recalling his uneasy expression when I announced my marriage. But it wasn't Robert's fault. It was my mistake for not seeing through John. I hope this experience doesn't make me lose faith in people. I still want to use the law to fight for justice and help others. I heard you suffered a severe burn. Are you okay? That day, I had gone back to my hometown to see my friends, but I got burned. Something feels off about what the people around me are saying, and the things my husband, Justin, is mentioning. He probably thinks he's good at keeping secrets, but he shouldn't expect to keep it hidden forever. I'll find out. I'm Emily Smith, 43 years old. I met my husband Justin, who's 2 years older than me, at a party hosted by a friend. We started dating afterwards. I remember being surprised at first by how he always treated women with respect. That's because, since I was young, I've always been wary of men and hadn't dated much. The spark that ignited within me, as I went back and forth between work and home, was Justin. He always listened to my stories with enthusiasm, and treated me to wonderful dinners. Even if those things sound cliché, I, who wasn't used to men, fell for him instantly. I promise to make you happy for the rest of our lives. Will you marry me? Yes, I'd love to. Our married life started smoothly, but after about 6 months, things changed. By the way, Emily, how long do you plan on keeping your current job? I plan to work as long as I can. You never know what the future holds. Justin then began tapping the corner of the table, looking displeased. We can live comfortably on my salary alone, so what's the problem? You want more luxury? No, it's not that. I just think we should save for a rainy day. Justin then began talking rapidly. I've been made the project leader at work, so I want to focus on my job as a man. Oh, the project leader role you said you wanted, right? I think I should handle the work, and you should handle the household chores. I need to set a proper example as a leader, or others might disrespect me. I remember feeling bewildered by what he was saying. I believe I'm managing both work and home quite well. Don't you want to support me so that I can perform well at my job? Of course, I want to support you in any way I can, but what exactly do you want me to do? Justin then clicked his tongue and wagged his finger from side to side. With such an attitude, your work would be affected. It's not like you would get a promotion anyway. Promotions aren't up to me. It makes more sense for me to be the primary earner, and for you to support me solidly. Justin went on and on with his reasoning. He wanted me to quit my job and support him from home. Okay, I get it. I'll take care of everything at home. But in return, make sure you earn well for us. I said it jokingly, but I had a lot on my mind. However, I already knew that Justin values his job reviews the most, and once he makes up his mind, he doesn't listen to anyone's opinions. I've decided to quit my job next month. But if I stay home, I'll feel suffocated. Knowing you, you'd just become a boring housewife, cooped up all day. I'll allow you to work part-time at the supermarket, provided you handle the house chores perfectly. A supermarket? You're deciding that for me? What's the issue? If you've got complaints, then just stay home. The supermarket is close by, it's convenient. I do have a certification I obtained during my single career days for advancement, but it seems I won't be using it anytime soon. I feel it's a bit of a waste not to utilize it, but it's all for Justin. Ever since then, though I possess job-relevant qualifications, I've been working part-time. Being cooped up at home all the time isn't my thing, and this has surprisingly become a nice way to refresh. When I came home, Justin used to check if I had done the household chores flawlessly, but lately, he's been coming home at midnight and heading straight to bed. He used to be home by 8 p.m. Is it normal for him to come home this late now? Moreover, the messages he used to send me every time he was about to come home stopped coming. I remember being yelled at for sleeping before he returned. I wonder if all housewives are supposed to wait for their husbands without sleeping? When you upset Justin, he remains in a bad mood for about a week. To avoid future troubles, I'd wait for him. However, I once unintentionally fell asleep due to daily fatigue. I must have dozed off. Oh, what about dinner? You were still up? You think I'm gonna eat at this hour? Just go to sleep. I've been scolded for sleeping before, but this was the first time he reacted like this when I was awake. Despite rubbing my sleepy eyes and waiting for him because he said to wait, the way he spoke was just too much. However, arguing back would only upset him more, so I chose to be submissive. I get it. I'm sorry for this. Coming home late and then hearing this? What's wrong with you? Despite it being the middle of the night, he loudly made his way to the fridge and grabbed a beer. You expect me to eat at this hour? Are you trying to make me fat? That wasn't my intention. You stay up without a care, probably 'cause you've got a part-time job and don't have to worry about tomorrow. I, on the other hand, have work in the morning. If it's such a bother, I figured I'd just go to sleep early. However, at times, Justin would show a strange kind of kindness. It reminded me of the care he used to show when we were dating. I don't want to disturb you with any noise. How about we have separate bedrooms? Separate bedrooms? How are we gonna arrange the rooms? There's that empty room in the back, remember? I'm thinking of making that my study. There's enough space to fit a small bed in that study, right? Even though he says study, it's really just a cleaned-out storage room. Looks like he's planning to bring a bed into that space. The bed should be delivered by Tuesday afternoon. I'll start sleeping there from next week. You ordered such a big thing all of a sudden? It's really coming this Tuesday? When it gets here, can you quickly set it up? You'll probably have some free time, and it'll be good exercise for you. Good exercise? He really has a way of saying whatever he wants. Don't they usually have professionals assemble beds and stuff? It'd cost around $50, and that's just a waste of money. He always has to have it his way. I can't understand why I have to do it, but since he ordered it, I guess I have no choice. Fine, I got it. Let's go ahead and split the bedrooms. Fortunately, I was able to set up the bed by myself. Even though I think it's unfair, since he's the one bringing in the money, I can't really complain. Life with Justin was all about keeping him pleased and doing household chores, until there was a change. One Saturday, I received an email. It was from a high school friend, saying they're having a reunion next month on a Friday. It's been years since the last one. I used to hang out with them every once in a while after high school. Haven't seen them much since we got married. It's really nice they reached out. Justin doesn't seem too keen on me meeting my old friends, so I haven't really seen them much since we got married. I think I'm gonna go. It's been a while since I saw everyone. With Justin coming home late every night and heading straight to his study where his bed is, we barely see each other on weekdays. But he's still family, so I thought I should let him know. There's a reunion in my hometown this coming Friday. I'm gonna drop by for a bit. Whether he was listening or not, all I got was a half-hearted response. The reunion starts in the evening. Since Justin will be home late and going straight to his study, I don't think he'll need dinner. He did respond, so he can't say he didn't hear me. I might as well head over the day before. Who knows when I'll get another chance like this? The reunion is in the neighboring state, where I grew up. I have weekends off from my part-time job, so I decided to take Thursday and Friday off. I headed to my parents' place on Thursday morning. I met up with some close friends on Friday, and then went to the reunion in the evening. We had a lot of catching up to do and the conversation was lively. It felt like I was back in high school, and I had a great time. I'm so glad I decided to go to the reunion. It was refreshing and absolutely amazing. I had already told him about the reunion and my plans. He's an adult, he can handle himself for a few days. It shouldn't be a big deal if I'm not home for a couple of days. A call from Justin? I didn't notice. What happened? The day after the reunion, there had been a call from Justin, but I couldn't pick it up. It's rare to get a call from Justin, who typically doesn't stay in touch and mainly uses his smartphone for gaming. Hey, are you okay? There seemed to be panic on the other end. Justin's voice was shaky. Okay? What do you mean? I heard you got a serious burn, are you alright? Huh? Didn't I mention before? I'm visiting my parents. Justin interrupted as if cutting off my words. But I heard you were taken away. There were EMS everywhere, weren't there? I decided to push back and address the strangeness of Justin's story. You say things like I heard you were taken away and weren't there, sounds like you got this secondhand? Caught off guard, Justin hastily continued. Yeah. Seems like you're okay. I'll hang up then. What do you mean I'm okay? Sounds like you didn't go home last night, did you? Justin started to get defensive in his usual way. Quit nagging. Always bold when I'm down, huh? I can't get the picture, what's going on? I'm staying at an extended stay hotel. Take care of the insurance stuff, alright? Something about a fire, insurance procedures, and staying at an extended stay hotel. I have a bad feeling about this. While watching the local news, I found out my house had burned down. What had happened while I was at the reunion? I contacted Justin again, seeking more details about the situation. I'm gonna take some time off from my part-time job and stay with my parents for a bit. Can you tell me what happened? I don't know either. Anyway, I'm swamped with work, so no need for unnecessary calls. I explained the situation to my part-time job and got some time off. During this time, I stayed at my parents', sorting out the insurance and such. Amidst the chaos of dealing with my house's fire, Justin's odd behavior, and unfamiliar insurance processes, I got a message from a colleague at work. It was quite rare for this usually calm lady to be mad. Apparently, she was upset that I pretended not to be home. If someone had been there, I would have noticed. Plus, there was no reason to pretend not to be home. She followed up with an email, but everything written was unfamiliar to me. When I came to your house, it seemed like you were there. Why didn't you come out, was what she wrote. According to her, she saw someone who looked like me entering the house. She tried calling out, but I, or whoever it was, just went inside without acknowledging her. My hearing isn't bad, and she has a loud voice, so I'm sure I would have noticed. Maybe I'm mistaken? In the end, I was able to explain and clear up the misunderstanding. But that day, I was in my hometown, getting ready for a reunion and meeting with friends. I couldn't have been at home. It's strange. There's no way I was home at that time. Could it be that there was another woman at my house? I couldn't let this go, so I headed straight to the police. I explained to the police that I wasn't at home, and asked them about the situation. When I inquired about the woman who was carried out of the house with burns all over her body, it turned out she was Justin's childhood friend. Lucy Brown is claiming to be Justin's wife and she's hospitalized with burns? Why? Lucy Brown, I remember that name because she attended our wedding. She left a very bad impression on me. She wore a white mini dress to our wedding and was continuously arm in arm with Justin at the head table. Thinking back, her behavior, acting like she was the bride, ignoring everyone's concerns, was really infuriating. Why is her name coming up again after all this time? Is he still in touch with her? I had always seen her as someone to be wary of, but I never expected to meet her again like this. Hey, I went to the police station today, and it seems that the woman rescued from our house fire was Lucy Brown, who also attended our wedding. Why was she in our house? Well, I wasn't home that day because of work, so I don't know. Maybe she was dropping off something I left behind? If you were at work, then why was she alone in our house and got severely burned in a fire? Isn't that odd? Justin, seeming irritated by my questions, began to get defensive. I don't know why she was at our house. I don't have time for your little housewife detective games. Stop bothering me when I'm working. Detective games? That's when it hit me. If he doesn't know, then I'll just hire a detective to find out. Okay, I'm sorry for all the questions. Just make sure you don't disturb my work anymore. Once I made up my mind, things moved quickly. I contacted Justin's workplace to verify whether he was there or not. At the same time, I hired a highly recommended detective to conduct a full investigation. It turned out Justin left work right on time that day, and not only was he seeing Lucy Brown, but he also had another affair. While he was blaming me for everything, he himself was busy cheating. I'm definitely gonna hit back. Knowing Justin, confronting him directly about his affairs would backfire on me. So, I decided to pretend to be concerned and reached out to Justin. Since the day of the fire, you've been staying at a hotel, right? Are you eating properly? Yeah, I'm managing. I'm mostly at work, so I just go back to sleep. No problems at all. You haven't been eating properly, have you? I'll whip something up and bring it over. What would you like? I've been wanting to see you for a while now. Then, I heard Justin's panicked voice. You don't need to worry about me like that. I've been managing just fine. Stop being stubborn. Health is fundamental. I'll make it, so you just need to heat it up and eat. Quit fussing over me. Always butting in and nagging. It was clear that Justin was hiding something. I decided to stake out near his workplace. Sitting on a bench nearby, I spotted a woman I'd never seen before walking arm in arm with Justin. I had my suspicions, but seeing them holding hands directly was quite a blow. But if I confront them here, he'll just deflect. What should I do? As I pondered, Justin entered what seemed to be her apartment, still hand in hand. I got good photos, so with solid evidence, I decided to confront them. What are you doing, Justin? Who's this woman? Well, it's nothing suspicious. He stammered as he spoke. I didn't ask if there was something or not. Who is she? This is Susan Davis. She's a colleague from the same project team. I thought I should help her out since she's being stalked and I'm the team lead. Oh, really? Hand in hand like a bodyguard? Must be tough being a project leader, huh? As I made a sarcastic remark, Justin seemed all flustered. Susan stepped up with confidence. What's the matter, old lady? I'm younger and have a stable job. I stand a better chance, don't I? Do you even understand what you're saying? I never imagined I'd get into a spat with a younger woman like this. You work at the same company. There's no way you didn't know Justin was married, right? Rather than that, why not let Justin go? It's sad to see him returning to a home he doesn't want to. What do you mean sad? Don't you get it? I can make him happier than you can. In her eyes, I'm just an obstacle that's keeping Justin from being free. This is pointless. I'm glad we had this talk. If you are okay with someone like him, I'll just let you be with him. Giving up because you know you've lost? Well, at least you're understanding. That's a relief. But you better clean up your own mess before we talk any further. Hearing my words, Susan already had a smug look on her face. I'll pay as much as you want. So, how much are you asking for? You think I'm money by cleaning up your mess? I never said anything about money. What's the matter? Playing hard to get? You want money, don't you? She doesn't seem to realize yet. I've done all investigations and stand here fully informed. Did I say anything about that? If I told you to take responsibility for what you've done, would you understand what I mean? Then, Susan's face went pale and she started shaking. This neighborhood has a high security awareness. Lots of security cameras around. They come in handy at times like this. Truly a lifesaver. The camera captured Susan sneaking into the house when both Justin and I were away. Unfortunately, using the spare key Lucy had gotten from Justin, she walked into the house and probably mistook her, who was pretending to be his wife, to actually be Justin's wife. Is that his wife? Her voice was clearly picked up by the security camera. The camera clearly caught you crouching in the garden, playing with a lighter. It seems she intended to start a small fire for a prank, but that's evidence of a crime right there. Should I take this to the police and a law office? Wait for the call at home. At first, Susan acted ignorant, but she couldn't keep up the charade. Upon a detailed police investigation, Susan confessed to starting the fire and was subsequently arrested. Afterwards, I confronted Justin and decided to confront his other mistress, Lucy. It's been a while. Remember me from the wedding? Let's see. I'm Justin's actual wife. I heard you told the police at first that you were his wife? Lucy awkwardly stared at the wrinkles in her bedsheet. Well, I feel like I'm his real wife. It's okay to tell the police that, right? What do you mean? Justin always complained about how his wife doesn't cook proper meals. When he comes home tired from work, there's nothing tempting to eat. With a surprisingly childish tone for someone of her age, Lucy started spewing unbelievable excuses. That's why I cooked for Justin. Even after a late work night, dishes that give him energy. We ate together. That's how it was? I finally understood why Justin would look annoyed waiting for dinner so late at night. So, after his overtime, he'd stop by your place, eat with you, and then come home? Bingo! They say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. He devoured the meals I prepared. I thought she was rude at the wedding, but I didn't expect her to be this bad. I struggled to understand why Justin would have an affair with this woman. He always complained that your meals were bland with just veggies and that there was no booze. I've known him since we were kids, so I know exactly what he likes. I'm ready to remarry him anytime. How dare you just blurt out words like that? Well, Justin once said, if I break up with her, I can always eat your meals. Holding back my emotional surge, I conveyed my feelings to Lucy. You've been quite audacious while I was not home. He gave me the spare key because I'm like his partner, you know? Almost like his wife. Just because Justin gave you a spare key doesn't mean you can act like a burglar. You get that, right? Lucy seemed irritated by my remark and shot back. I've known Justin the longest. You just waltzed into his life. I've done nothing wrong. By the way, I've been recording this conversation. I'm gonna take this recording to the police and an attorney's office. Oh, and you're not the only one Justin's cheating with. Upon hearing that, Lucy broke down in tears. I promptly left the hospital room. Although Justin hadn't said a word inside, the moment we stepped out, he lashed out. Don't you feel sorry for them? Both of them have been kind to me and care for me. Care for you? What are you talking about? You don't even do household chores properly despite being a housewife. They took care of the things you couldn't, and that's why I didn't divorce you. Justin has a bad habit of blaming others when things don't go his way. Even so, his statements were quite audacious. Who do you think you are? You know I'm working a low-paying part-time job even though I have a CPA license because that's what you wanted, right? A CPA? Well, I got it when I was single. I didn't feel the need to tell you. Justin has an outdated belief that women are inferior to men. I have the license, but I don't have any practical experience. I can't even imagine what would happen if we divorced. So, what if you have a license? But I definitely wouldn't want to live with you who cheated on me. Justin appeared defiant, but his left arm was trembling. What's your point? What are you trying to say? I want a divorce. After all this, rebuilding our relationship is impossible. In the end, I divorced Justin and started a new life. It felt good having earned my CPA license while working in my corporate days, just in case something happened. It turned out Justin had affairs with 2 women, and after news of a fire at our home made headlines, the truth about him surfaced. He seemed to have become an outcast among the women at work, making it impossible for him to stay there. For a while, he apparently hopped from one short-term job to another using a fake name. But his suspicious behavior gave him away quickly, and wherever he went, he was labeled as that guy from the incident. Everywhere he turned, there were folks eager to dig into the juicy details, and it seemed to have taken a toll on his mental health. But let's face it, he made his bed and now he's lying in it. Yet, for some reason, Justin seemed to believe that I still had feelings for him. One day, he suddenly approached me. He was waiting outside my workplace. You're an accountant, right? Why don't you support me? I could be a stay-at-home husband now. I worked hard and studied to get that certification. It wasn't so I could support you. Don't get it twisted. Why are you being like this? Remember what we had? If you keep bothering me, I'm gonna run straight to that police station over there, got it? Seems Justin finally got the message, as he didn't approach me after that. I've been making use of the accounting certification, working at an accounting firm in the neighboring town. I've set my sights on someday having my own practice, so I'm swamped with work every day. There's been quite a gap since I got my certification, so there's a lot to relearn. But there's a joy in paving my own path in life. Breaking up with Justin was definitely the right choice. Now, every day feels fulfilling. Having lost my parents in an accident and grown up in an orphanage, I couldn't find any reason to live or to push forward. Then one day, I received a letter from my mother, who I believed was dead. What's more, the return address was our old family home. This couldn't possibly be happening. But maybe, just maybe. After agonizing for days, I decided to go to the address on the envelope. But as I saw our old home, memories flooding back, I was suddenly overtaken by fear. I decided to peek from the backyard first. I saw a middle-aged couple living there. I squinted for a closer look, thinking if I didn't recognize them, I'd sneak away. But in the next moment, I couldn't believe my eyes.
What? Dad, Mom?
I was dumbstruck by this unexpected turn of events. My name is Katie Anderson. I was placed in an orphanage at the age of 10 and left 2 years ago. I now juggle several part-time jobs and live alone in a cheap apartment in New York City. My parents passed away in a car accident when I was 10. During a holiday trip on the highway, we got involved in a multi-car pileup. I was in the back seat, and by some miracle, I survived. But my parents, in the front seats, were killed on impact when we hit a truck. We were returning from a fun day at the water park, a birthday treat I had longed for. While I was dozing off from exhaustion, I suddenly felt a jolt, as if a cannon had been fired directly into my back. The next moment, I found myself paralyzed and unable to move. In that disorienting moment, I desperately called out for my parents. But with no response, I lost consciousness and woke up in a hospital bed. As soon as the nurses realized I was awake, they started bustling around, and soon after, police officers and doctors flooded into my room. All the while, I kept wondering when my parents would come. I asked the nurses multiple times, "Where are Dad and Mom?" But only got vague answers. At 10, I thought they might be in another hospital. However, a few days later, I understood the evasive responses. My mother's sister told me that my parents' injuries were too severe, and they didn't make it. Furthermore, she said, "I have a family of my own," and told me she couldn't take me in. I just couldn't grasp the situation. My mother's sister explained things to me in simple terms so I could understand. As a result, I understood that since I had lost my parents, I was going to be placed in an orphanage after being discharged from the hospital. I had many questions about what would happen to the house I lived in and what I would do about school, but I remember feeling a slight relief at the thought of not becoming part of a stranger's family. Afterwards, once my injuries healed and I was able to move again, I was sent to an orphanage instead of returning to my own house. My mother's sister had taken care of my parents' funeral and sorted out their belongings while I was hospitalized, and she had also sent my personal items to the facility for me. We had been exchanging letters while I was in the hospital, so I was informed about these arrangements. To be honest, it felt like strangers had rummaged through my house, and I really didn't like it, but there was nothing a 10-year-old like me could do. Moreover, I never even imagined that I wouldn't be able to return home. I wanted to know why, but I didn't know who to ask or how to convey my feelings. Everything moved forward without my input, and I felt like I was just being swept along. That's how my days went. Even after moving to the orphanage, I'd receive letters from my mother's sister a few times a year, but the content was always the same. "How are you? Do you need anything?" At first, I wrote back, but soon I ran out of things to say. So, little by little, I stopped replying to her letters. To begin with, I had never met my mother's sister while my parents were alive, so she felt like a stranger to me. Being worried about by someone I felt was a stranger meant nothing to me, and exchanging letters became a chore. Maybe she sensed how I felt, because the letters from my mother's sister became less and less frequent over the years. By the time I was ready to leave the orphanage, I had almost forgotten about the letters and our relationship had become very distant. I always felt as if I was left behind in some unknown world, spending my days in the orphanage. While I was hospitalized, the funeral took place, and I ended up coming to the facility without ever going back home. Because of that, no matter how much time passed, it all never felt real to me.
Why am I here?
I constantly felt a sense of alienation. As I grew up, this feeling of alienation turned into loneliness.
I have nothing left. There's no point in trying since I have nothing.
Feeling this way, I lost all motivation. So, when I graduated high school and left the facility to get a job, I couldn't fit in with the work environment and the differences with my colleagues, so I quit almost immediately. After that, I hopped from job to job, but I always felt out of place, and none of the jobs lasted long. The time it took to find a new job kept getting longer and longer, and my already limited savings quickly ran out. I managed to scrape by with day labor jobs, living each day on the edge. I often wondered if there was truly any meaning to keep living in such loneliness. Wouldn't it be easier to just leave my apartment and live on the streets? I thought about it many times, but always backed out at the last moment. If my parents knew I was living on the streets, they would surely be devastated. Even though I knew I'd never see them again, I didn't want to make them sad. One exhausting day in that daily grind, I got a call that a letter addressed to me had arrived at the orphanage where I once stayed. Maybe out of guilt for quitting my job shortly after starting, I tried to avoid any association with the facility. So, I planned to have them discard the letter without reading it. But the moment I heard who sent it, I felt as though I'd been hit over the head with a hammer. Incredibly, the letter was from my mother, who I believed had died in an accident when I was 10. I immediately headed to the facility to retrieve the letter. My mind was in turmoil ever since I got the call. My parents were supposed to have died in an accident when I was 10. That's an unchangeable fact. So, miracles don't happen, and there must have been some mistake with the letter. I tried hard to ground myself and not to escape from reality. But against my better judgment, the impossible hope that their deaths might have been a mistake kept cropping up in my mind. If my mother was indeed alive, why had she left me in the facility all these years? What does she hope to achieve by sending a letter now, after all this time? As the train rocked me on my way to the facility, these questions plagued my mind. However, I couldn't find any satisfactory answers or sort out my emotions until the very end. My head was a mess of confusion, joy, doubt, anger, and sadness, and I felt like I could burst into tears at any moment. By the time I arrived at the facility, after a journey of over an hour, my mind was blank from overthinking.
Just see the letter and then decide,
I muttered to myself, trying to reassure myself, before entering the building. When I collected the letter from the office, I stared intently at the handwriting on the envelope. Without a doubt, it was my late mother's handwriting, and the sender was indeed her. With apprehension, I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 letters, each adorned with illustrations of a character I adored when I was 10. The first letter began, "To Katie on her 20th birthday." The soft, somewhat curly handwriting of my mother filled the pages, making my heart ache and my eyes well up just looking at it. The letters overflowed with memories from when I was born until I turned 10, and my mother's hopes and imaginations of how I might grow and change in the next 10 years. It was just so, her. Trying not to get the letters wet from my tears, I looked up at the ceiling over and over. Still, the tears flowed, staining the paper in spots. After reading the letters, I thanked the facility staff and promptly left. My mind was still in turmoil, and I wasn't in a state to talk to anyone. Riding the train home, I reread the letters multiple times. I kept rereading it, feeling that I might grasp something. And eventually, I concluded that these letters were written before the accident. I wrote a letter to my mother on my 10th birthday to show my appreciation. Probably, my mother wrote this letter combining her recollections of my 10th birthday and her hopes for the next decade. The question was, who sent it? The first person I thought of was my mother's sister. However, we hadn't been in touch for years, and I couldn't figure out why she would send a letter in my mother's name. Besides, the return address was our old home from when I was 10. If it was indeed my mother's sister, she'd probably use her own name and address. Considering how out of touch we've been, it feels unlikely she'd even remember me. So, who else could it be? I drew a blank. The motherly warmth in the letter filled me with both happiness and confusion. What should I feel? What should I do after reading this? No matter how much I thought, I couldn't find an answer. Exhausted from pondering, I stashed the letter in a drawer, deciding to act like nothing happened and return to my usual life. But as the days went by, the existence of the letter nagged at me. I thought about throwing it away, but each time I saw my mother's handwriting on the envelope, I just couldn't. Instead, I considered meeting the sender. After all, I didn't have much to begin with, so there wasn't much more to lose. Plus, maybe, just maybe, I could ask them for some assistance in life. Unbeknownst to me, I might have been hoping that the letter's sender had something to change my current life. On the bus headed to a familiar address, I was gazing absent-mindedly at a townscape that looked nothing like my memories. Where there used to be just fields and woods, now stood a large shopping mall and numerous houses. The station I alighted at had a new bus loop, and even a chic cafe.
This is also a world unknown to me,
I pondered as I trudged toward the address written on the letter. But a few minutes later, when I turned a street corner, the sight that greeted me took my breath away. It was a residential area that had barely changed from 10 years ago, just as I remembered it. The view instantly pulled me out of the colorless, hazy world I was in, and transported me back to the vibrant world from a decade ago. This was definitely the town I used to live in. And further down this road was our family home. Before I realized, I found myself running toward the house. I was filled with a peculiar sense of relief, like a school kid returning home or a long-lost child. At the end of my mad dash stood my beloved home, just as I remembered it. Indeed, the letter had been sent from this very place. However, once I got to the front of the house, I couldn't muster the courage to ring the doorbell. The fear of the unknown, of not knowing what would happen next, held me back more than the desire to learn the truth. Pondering on what to do next, I decided to first scout out the backyard. I felt slightly uncomfortable, as if I were a thief, as I discreetly peeked into the garden. And there, on the balcony, I saw a middle-aged couple preparing to sunbathe. The man appeared to be in a wheelchair. To ascertain if I knew them, I continued to observe. Amidst their soft-spoken conversation, for a brief moment, the couple looked in my direction. The instant I saw their faces, I couldn't help but exclaim aloud.
What? Dad, Mom? You're kidding, right?
Frozen in surprise, the man in the wheelchair noticed me. Katie? Is that you, Katie? Upon murmuring my name, he suddenly began crying out loud. I, on the other hand, was paralyzed, too overwhelmed by the shocking turn of events. The next moment, the woman, sensing something amiss, rushed out to the balcony in a panic. She ran straight to the man in the wheelchair, trying to comfort him. While sobbing, the man pointed towards me and seemed to be explaining something to the woman. The woman stared intently at me, then suddenly smiled and said,
You're Katie, right? I have something to talk about. Can you come in?
She invited me into her home. Although I couldn't grasp the situation, I had many questions too. I silently nodded and was ushered into the living room from the front door. During the introductions that followed, I learned the woman's name was Irene. And the man in the wheelchair was, as I suspected, my father, Andrew. Furthermore, the two of them were married and apparently lived in this house alone as a couple. According to Irene, my father had been in a severe accident and had been in a critical condition, hovering between life and death. I was told I should have been informed about this when I was 10, but I didn't remember it at all. When I told Irene this, she asked,
How was it explained to you?
I replied that my mother's sister had told me he was in a desperate condition with no hope of survival. But on reflection, it seemed I only heard that my mother had passed away. If that was the case, why had my father been declared dead? Irene helped me reconcile my memories with the truth for hours on end. As a result, I realized I'd made a massive misunderstanding. After the accident, the 10-year-old me, unable to comprehend my father's unconscious state, had felt rejected by him since he never came to see me.
Daddy doesn't come to see me at all. I'm sure he's mad because I said I wanted to go to the water park and that's why Mom died.
At 10, I felt this way and believed my father had grown to hate me. That feeling probably transformed into the memory that both my parents had died in the accident.
I'm just guessing, But I think for the young Katie back then, it was less painful to believe both parents had passed away than to think your father hated you.
Irene said, trying to console me, but honestly, I felt deeply guilty toward my father. Yet, a question arose. I was terrified to ask, but if I didn't, I would regret it forever. Taking a deep breath, I asked Irene,
"Why didn't my father come to get me?"
Irene paused, thinking, and then exchanged glances with my father. Without saying anything, he nodded, and taking that as a cue, Irene began to explain the situation at the time.
Andrew regained consciousness more than half a year after the accident. Half a year.
That coincided with the time I was discharged from the hospital.
Although it was miraculous that he woke up, it took him several more months to fully grasp the situation. Waking up feeling like he had just slept one night, only to realize half a year had passed. It's understandable.
Moreover, my father suffered from post-accident complications, leaving him with many disabilities affecting his memory, speech, and body. The doctors had apparently told him,
"Returning to your original life is impossible."
Initially, my mother's sister, having heard that recovery was hopeless, proceeded with plans to place me in a care facility as scheduled.
When I came to, nothing was left. I painfully realized the length and importance of the time I'd lost while I was out.
My father said that, with a faint glimmer of tears in his eyes. According to Irene, after being discharged, my father went directly to the disability facility where Irene worked.
There were times he wanted to see Katie but couldn't articulate it. At the same time, he began to mentally grasp the death of your mother, Sophia, so for a while, Andrew was deeply depressed and even had to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
My father, having lost everything, had once sought meaning in life amidst despair, just like me. Hearing this story, I felt incredibly comforted. My father hadn't disliked or forgotten about me. On the contrary, he cared about me so much that it drove him to mental illness. In that moment, I felt a mysterious warmth, as if the cold loneliness that had settled in my heart was slowly melting away. According to Irene, even after returning from the psychiatric facility, my father's emotional state remained unstable. Not only did he refuse rehabilitation, but he also didn't eat, couldn't convey what he wanted, and often had behavioral issues like lashing out at staff or throwing things. The staff's approach to my father gradually became more mechanical. Amongst all this, the one who always faced him without a hint of annoyance was Irene. To understand what my father wanted to convey, Irene used handmade cards and whiteboards to communicate with him. Moreover, she would find time for massages every day to ensure his muscles didn't stiffen and even came over to practice conversing. My father once told Irene,
"I see traces of Sophia in Irene. I thought Sophia would be saddened by my pitiful state, which made me feel like I had to pull myself together."
As he said this, he tightly gripped Irene's hand. It was palpable just how important Irene had become to my father. Seeing the two of them, I felt a pang of envy. I wished I had someone to support me in the same way. After that, my father, as if reborn, diligently attended rehab every day and stopped lashing out at the staff entirely. When my father first arrived at the facility, he wouldn't even try to get out of bed. But eventually, he began going to the rehab room on his own, even doing exercises voluntarily. It sounded like a miracle just hearing about it. But the real miracle was yet to come. Thanks to his relentless rehab, my father's condition improved to the point where he could lead a normal life. Incredibly, he was able to leave the disability facility.
Even the doctors were amazed, saying they'd never seen such a recovery.
My father said with a hint of pride. Besides my father, Irene was also smiling, looking genuinely happy. Her smile reminded me so much of my late mother that my heart was wrapped in a strange sense of nostalgia and warmth. Speaking of my mother, I hadn't asked about the letter yet. I pulled the letter from my mother out of my bag and inquired about its origin. But my father suddenly looked down and went silent. Seeing this, Irene stepped in and explained why they had sent the letter on his behalf.
"After we got married, I stumbled upon this letter while cleaning up a room. Andrew had always been thinking about you, Katie, but he felt he didn't deserve to see you. I convinced him that, at the very least, he should send this letter."
With Irene's explanation, all the messy pieces in my head finally came together. It was all a twist of fate. Because of the accident and his disability, my father couldn't come to see me. I had mistakenly thought he was dead. Both of us felt lonely and had been walking through a dim life. However, it was this letter left by my mother and Irene that brought my father and me back together.
"I never once forgot about you, Katie. I've always felt guilty for not being there for so long. I thought if I reached out now, it might be a bother. I'm truly sorry."
Saying this, my father deeply bowed his head to me. After hearing about his past struggles, I didn't feel any resentment. In fact, I was genuinely happy to know he had always been thinking about me. Realizing we both had moments of utter despair at the same time made me chuckle and think, like father, like daughter. When I shared this realization with Irene and my father, they both laughed and shed tears. It was the warmest tears I had ever seen. Glancing out the window, I saw the sunset shining on the balcony. I mentioned,
"I think I'm gonna head out now,"
and stood up. But with a panicked voice, my father intervened. "Wait! We finally met, and I don't want to let you go again, Katie. I know I may not have the right to ask this now, but I want us to be a family again. Please stay." As he spoke, tears different from earlier streamed down his face. I was genuinely touched to realize that my father cared so much for me. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the fear that I might ruin the happiness he currently had with Irene. I was torn between wanting to decline the offer and the desire to continue living with my father. I stood there, frozen, unable to answer.
"Hey, Katie. Do you think you'd reject me if I was your mom?"
"What?" I stared deep into Irene's eyes, taken aback by the sudden question. Irene smiled tenderly as if she could see straight into my conflicted heart. Not just her smile, but her generous care and attention were so much like my real mother. It felt as if my real mother was pushing me forward. And in that moment, I found the courage to be true to my feelings. "If you'll have me, I'd love to be a part of this family." Shouting my answer, my father's face lit up with joy, almost toppling over from his wheelchair with excitement. Seeing him like that, I laughed heartily for the first time in a decade. I finally felt I had found a place where I belong in the world. Half a year has passed since then. I'm now preparing fervently to pursue my dream of becoming a flight attendant. And next year, I plan to have the interview. Before coming back here, I lacked motivation and had given up thinking about my dreams and my future. However, when I was able to think about my future again after reuniting with my father, my mother's letter guided me once more. The last line of the letter read,
"What are you up to now? Did you become the flight attendant you always dreamed of? No matter what the future holds, know that your mom is cheering you on."
With my mother's loving words in my heart, I decided to chase after my dreams. And I want to spend peaceful days with my father and Irene,